The annual gala of Brightwell Enterprises was nothing short of breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen rain above the grand hall, casting warm light on tables dressed in white linen and gold-trimmed china. Waiters in crisp black uniforms glided between the tables, carrying trays of wine and delicacies that seemed too beautiful to eat. At the head table sat Daniel Cross, the 35-year-old CEO whose rise to power was the kind of story business magazines loved to print. Sharp-jawed, impeccably dressed in a cobalt blue suit, Daniel exuded wealth, control, and the quiet arrogance of a man who believed nothing could surprise him anymore. Tonight was supposed to be the biggest night of his career. A potential multi-billion-dollar merger with a Japanese tech giant was on the line, and all eyes were on Daniel. Investors, foreign dignitaries, and shareholders waited eagerly for his every word. Even the dessert, an imported white chocolate mousse topped with fresh raspberries, had been chosen to impress. The atmosphere buzzed with confidence and luxury. Guests laughed, glasses clinked, and Daniel leaned back in his chair, his expression calm but triumphant. When the waitstaff brought in the grand finale, the mousse dessert, Daniel's plate was placed before him like a crown jewel. He picked up his fork, the silver glinting under the chandeliers. Cameras flashed as guests tried to capture the CEO enjoying the exquisite treat. Daniel poised the fork above the dessert, ready to take the first bite. And then it happened. A voice, small but fierce, rang out through the silence. "Don't eat that if you want to stay alive." The hall froze. Forks hovered midair. The music from the string quartet stuttered to a halt. Heads turned, confusion etched on every face. Daniel paused, fork suspended, his brows furrowing. "What?" he muttered, scanning the room. From near the edge of the table stood a little girl, no more than 7, her golden hair messy, her yellow dress dotted with faded patterns of birds. She stood out like a misplaced sunbeam in a sea of black suits and gowns. Her small hand was outstretched, trembling but determined, pointing straight at his plate. "Don't eat it. Please, it's not safe." Whispers erupted among the guests. Some chuckled nervously, thinking it was a child's prank. Others exchanged uneasy glances. The idea that anyone would interrupt Daniel Cross, the Daniel Cross, was almost unthinkable. Security moved toward her, but before they reached, a woman in a faded janitor's uniform rushed forward, panic on her face. Maria, one of the cleaning staff, grabbed the girl's shoulders. "Emily," she hissed, her voice breaking with both fear and embarrassment. "What are you doing?" "You can't," but Emily didn't back down. Her wide eyes locked onto Daniel's, filled with something that sent a chill down his spine. "I'm telling you the truth," she said, louder this time. "Don't eat it." Daniel lowered his fork slowly, his hand tightening around the handle. He studied the girl, then her mother, then the dessert again. The room seemed to tilt for a moment. His mind, usually quick and unshakable, suddenly wavered, because in Emily's voice there was no mischief. No childish joke, only raw, urgent certainty. And for the first time in years, Daniel Cross, the man who feared nothing, froze. The grand hall was still frozen in stunned silence. Daniel's fork hovered just above the dessert, his sharp eyes locked on the trembling little girl in the yellow dress. The room felt heavy, like even the chandeliers were holding their breath. The murmurs began. "Who is she?" one guest whispered. "Is this some kind of stunt?" another hissed. "Security should remove her at once," muttered an investor in a tuxedo, glaring at Maria, the janitor. Maria's face burned with shame. She knelt beside her daughter, gripping Emily's hand tightly. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Cross," she stammered, her voice breaking. "She doesn't know what she's saying. Please forgive her. I'll take her away immediately." But Emily refused to back down. Her small hand shot out, pointing firmly at the mousse on Daniel's plate. "It's poisoned!" she shouted. The word hit the room like a bomb. A ripple of gas followed. Someone dropped a fork that clattered loudly against the marble floor. "Ridiculous!" snapped a woman seated 2 chairs away. "This is absurd. How could a janitor's daughter know such a thing?" Daniel's expression hardened. "And yet," he said slowly, his deep voice carrying across the hall, "she was certain enough to shout it in front of hundreds of people." The girl's words gnawed at him. He wasn't a man who believed in nonsense, but something about her tone, the fire in her small eyes. It didn't feel like a child's prank. He glanced toward the dessert again. The delicate mousse sat perfectly, the white chocolate gleaming under the chandelier's light, the berry glaze shining like rubies. Exquisite. Perfect. but now it looked dangerous. "Bring me another plate," Daniel ordered sharply. The head waiter blinked. "Sir?" "Another plate." Identical. The waiter scurried off, and moments later he returned with another mousse, placing it carefully before Daniel. The CEO gestured to a nearby bodyguard. "Eat it." The bodyguard stiffened, his face paling. "Sir, with all due respect—" "That's an order," Daniel cut in, his voice cold, commanding. The room went dead quiet again. The guard glanced at the child, then at Daniel. With trembling hands, he picked up the fork, sliced into the mousse, and raised a bite to his lips. He swallowed. Nothing happened. Nervous laughter broke out across the hall. "See?" someone chuckled. "It's fine. Just childish nonsense." Maria's eyes welled with tears. She tugged Emily's arm. "Please, let's go." "You've embarrassed us enough." But Emily shook her head furiously. Her voice cracked with desperation. "No, that one wasn't poisoned."
"His was."
She pointed at Daniel's plate again. "The one they gave you." Daniel froze, his gaze snapping back to the untouched mousse before him. A strange unease coiled in his stomach. Why would she be so specific? The laughter faded. Uneasy silence returned. Daniel leaned back slowly, tapping the table with his finger. Then, with deliberate calm, he pushed the plate away. "I won't be eating this tonight," he said firmly. Gasps rose again. For a man like Daniel, admitting hesitation was unheard of. But something deep in his gut told him Emily wasn't lying. "Take it to the lab," Daniel instructed his assistant. "Run a full analysis." The head waiter protested. "Sir, surely you don't believe—" "I said take it." His tone brooked no argument. The plate was whisked away under the watchful eyes of the stunned crowd. Daniel finally turned his gaze fully on Emily. She clutched her mother's hand, but her small face remained defiant. "Tell me," Daniel said softly but firmly, "how did you know?" The little girl hesitated. Her lips trembled. Then she whispered, "Because I saw who did it." The hall erupted into chaos. The words "I saw who did it" echoed through the hall like thunder. Guests shot up from their seats. Murmurs turned into sharp whispers. Security guards exchanged uneasy glances. Maria's knees nearly buckled as she tightened her hold on Emily's hand. Daniel leaned forward, his sharp eyes never leaving the little girl's face. "You saw?" His voice was calm but laced with danger. "Who?" Emily's chin quivered. She glanced at her mother, who shook her head desperately, silently begging her to stay quiet. But the girl turned back to Daniel. It was the man in the black suit with the red tie. She pointed with her tiny finger, her hand shaking. Every head whipped toward the corner of the room. A tall man, broad-shouldered, sat stiffly at one of the tables. His face was expressionless, but his hand twitched on the stem of his wineglass. The red tie at his throat seemed suddenly too bright, too obvious. "Impossible," someone hissed. "That's Mr. Grayson. He's been with the company for 20 years. The man in the red tie slowly rose to his feet, adjusting his jacket. His voice was smooth but cold. "Sir, this is absurd. You're going to take the word of a janitor's child over your most trusted advisor?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. He studied Grayson with an intensity that made the air feel heavy. For years, Grayson had been at his side handling sensitive deals, putting out fires before they spread. A man of precision, loyalty, or so Daniel had believed. Why would she lie? Daniel asked suddenly, his voice slicing through the noise. The question stunned the room. No one had an answer. Maria's voice shook. "Please, Mr. Cross, she's just a child." "She doesn't know what she's saying." But Emily stamped her foot, her small voice rising above the panic. "I saw him. He switched the plates when no one was looking. He thought nobody noticed, but I did." The hall erupted again. Shouts, protests, gasps. Grayson's face hardened, and for the briefest second, Daniel caught something in his eyes. A flicker of fear. "Security," Daniel said quietly, almost too calm. "Take Mr. Grayson aside." The guards moved at once. Grayson tried to protest, but they grabbed him firmly. He didn't struggle, yet his jaw was tight. His eyes locked on Daniel's with a promise of something darker. "Sir, this is madness," Grayson said, his voice cold steel. "You're being manipulated by a child's fantasy. When this blows over, you'll regret humiliating me like this." Daniel leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled under his chin. "If she's wrong, I'll apologize personally, but if she's right..." His eyes narrowed, sharp as a blade. You'll regret far more than humiliation. The room held its breath. Daniel finally turned his gaze back to Emily. You've caused quite a storm tonight, he said softly. Tell me exactly what you saw. Emily swallowed hard. Her small hands twisted in her dress. He walked past your table when everyone was clapping for your speech. He had 2 plates. He put the good one in front of you, but I saw him switch it with another one from his tray. He thought no one noticed. But I did. Her words were so simple yet so chilling. Daniel felt a cold weight settle in his chest. Maria whispered, trembling. Emily, why didn't you tell me before? Because no one ever listens, Emily muttered, her eyes shining with tears. Daniel's throat tightened. A child who had been invisible, ignored, dismissed. Even now her mother begged her to stay silent. And yet she was the only one who dared to speak. Sir? Daniel's assistant interrupted, rushing back into the hall holding a folder of papers. We just got a preliminary test on the plate you sent. The hall fell silent again. Every head turned. Daniel's eyes sharpened. And? The assistant swallowed, his face pale. It tested positive for traces of cyanide. A wave of horror swept across the hall. Gasps, screams, hands covering mouths. Glasses tipped and shattered. Maria collapsed into a chair, her face ashen. Daniel slowly turned back to Emily, the storm in his chest replaced by something he hadn't felt in years. Gratitude. She had just saved his life. The words, I saw who did it, echoed through the hall like thunder. Guests shot up from their seats. Murmurs turned into sharp whispers. Security guards exchanged uneasy glances. Maria's knees nearly buckled as she tightened her hold on Emily's hand. Daniel leaned forward, his sharp eyes never leaving the little girl's face. You saw? His voice was calm but laced with danger. Who? Emily's chin quivered. She glanced at her mother, who shook her head desperately, silently begging her to stay quiet. But the girl turned back to Daniel. It was the man in the black suit with the red tie. She pointed with her tiny finger, her hand shaking. Every head whipped toward the corner of the room. A tall man, broad-shouldered, sat stiffly at one of the tables. His face was expressionless, but his hand twitched on the stem of his wineglass. The red tie at his throat seemed suddenly too bright, too obvious. Impossible, someone hissed. That's Mr. Grayson. He's been with the company for 20 years. The man in the red tie slowly rose to his feet, adjusting his jacket. His voice was smooth but cold. Sir, this is absurd. You are going to take the word of a janitor as child over your most trusted advisor? Daniel didn't answer immediately. He studied Grayson with an intensity that made the air feel heavy. For years, Grayson had been at his side handling sensitive deals, putting out fires before they spread. A man of precision, loyalty, or so Daniel had believed. Why would she lie? Daniel asked suddenly, his voice slicing through the noise. The question stunned the room. No one had an answer. Maria's voice shook. Please, Mr. Cross. She's just a child. She doesn't know what she's saying. But Emily stamped her foot, her small voice rising above the panic. I saw him. He switched the plates when no one was looking. He thought nobody noticed, but I did. The hall erupted again. Shouts, protests, gasps. Grayson's face hardened, and for the briefest second, Daniel caught something in his eyes. A flicker of fear. Security, Daniel said quietly, almost too calm. Take Mr. Grayson aside. The guards moved at once. Grayson tried to protest, but they grabbed him firmly. He didn't struggle, yet his jaw was tight, his eyes locked on Daniel's with a promise of something darker. Sir, this is madness, Grayson said, his voice cold steel. You're being manipulated by a child's fantasy. When this blows over, you'll regret humiliating me like this. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled under his chin. If she's wrong, I'll apologize personally, but if she's right... His eyes narrowed, sharp as a blade. You'll regret far more than humiliation. The room held its breath. The guards escorted Grayson out, the heavy doors closing behind them. Slowly, the buzz of conversation swelled again. Guests debated furiously in whispers torn between disbelief and fear. Daniel finally turned his gaze back to Emily. You've caused quite a storm tonight, he said softly. Tell me exactly what you saw. Emily swallowed hard. Her small hands twisted in her dress. He walked past your table when everyone was clapping for your speech. He had 2 plates. He put the good one in front of you, but I saw him switch it with another one from his tray. He thought no one noticed, but I did. Her words were so simple, yet so chilling. Daniel felt a cold weight settle in his chest. Maria whispered, trembling, "Emily, why didn't you tell me before?" "Because no one ever listens," Emily muttered, her eyes shining with tears. Daniel's throat tightened. A child who had been invisible, ignored, dismissed. Even now her mother begged her to stay silent, and yet she was the only one who dared to speak. "Sir?" Daniel's assistant interrupted, rushing back into the hall holding a folder of papers. "We just got a preliminary test on the plate you sent." The hall fell silent again. Every head turned. Daniel's eyes sharpened. "And?" The assistant swallowed, his face pale. "It tested positive for traces of cyanide." A wave of horror swept across the hall. Gasps, screams, hands covering mouths. Glasses tipped and shattered. Maria collapsed into a chair, her face ashen. Daniel slowly turned back to Emily, the storm in his chest replaced by something he hadn't felt in years. Gratitude. She had just saved his life. The next morning, the city skyline glowed golden in the winter sun, but Daniel Cross's penthouse office felt cold, heavy with unspoken questions. He stood near the window, arms crossed, watching traffic snake below. The night's chaos still clung to him like smoke. The police had taken Grayson into custody after the lab confirmed the dessert was poisoned, but answers were still murky. Why would his most trusted advisor, his right hand for 2 decades, want him dead? The door clicked open. His assistant, Clara, entered carefully. "Sir, the board is demanding an emergency meeting. The press is already running with the story." Headlines read, "Brightwell CEO nearly poisoned at gala." Daniel sighed, rubbing his temple. "Of course they are." He turned sharply. "Any word from the detectives?" Clara hesitated. "They're still questioning Grayson. He hasn't said much." "But," she lowered her voice, "he asked for a lawyer tied to one of your competitors, Blackwell Industries." Daniel's jaw tightened. Of course, Blackwell, his fiercest rival. For years they had battled over contracts, tech patents, global expansion. If anyone stood to gain from Daniel's downfall, it was them. Still, the betrayal cut deeper than business. Grayson had been in his home, at his table, treated almost like family. The thought made Daniel's chest ache, not with sadness, but with fury. Before he could speak, Clara added, "There's another matter." He raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "The janitor's daughter, Emily." Clara shifted uncomfortably. "She's all over social media. Someone recorded her warning at the gala. People are calling her a hero. The little girl who saved the CEO. The clip has gone viral." Daniel blinked. The image of her small, trembling figure shouting across the hall came back to him. A child ignored, invisible, yet the only one who saw the truth. "Where is she now?" he asked. Clara hesitated. Her mother, Maria, asked to resign this morning. She said the attention is too much. She fears for Emily's safety. Daniel's chest tightened. He could imagine the online frenzy, the questions, the reporters. A child thrown into the storm because she had the courage to speak. "Get them here," Daniel said firmly. Both of them. Today. An hour later, Maria and Emily stood in his office, looking out of place among the leather chairs and glass walls. Maria's hands were twisted nervously in her cleaning apron, while Emily clutched a worn teddy bear. Daniel dismissed Clara and leaned against his desk, studying them. "I hear you want to quit," he said quietly. Maria's eyes filled with shame. "Yes, sir. I don't want my daughter dragged into something dangerous. We're just ordinary people. We don't belong in the middle of this." Emily piped up, her small voice firm. "But I saved you." The words hit Daniel like a punch. So simple, so true. "You did," he admitted, his voice softening. He knelt so his eyes were level with hers. "You saved my life, and that's not something I'll ever forget." Maria pulled Emily close, whispering, "Please don't say that. He's a powerful man, sweetheart. People like us, we just clean the floors. We're not meant to—" "Enough," Daniel interrupted gently but firmly. His gaze shifted to Maria. "You've been invisible in this company for too long, but your daughter saw something no one else did. She had the courage to speak when everyone else stayed silent. That makes her braver than most people in this building." Maria blinked, stunned. Daniel stood, straightening his jacket. "I won't let you resign. Not yet. If anything, I owe you both protection and answers." Emily tilted her head. Answers? Yes, Daniel's voice hardened. Because the man who tried to poison me wasn't working alone. He was someone's pawn. And now, Emily, you might be the only witness who can help me find out who asked pulling the strings. Emily's eyes widened, but instead of fear, there was determination in her gaze. Maria gasped. No, she's just a child. She can't. But Daniel's words cut through the room like steel. She already saved my life once, and now she may be the key to saving much more than that. The weight of his words settled on them all. The battle wasn't over. It was only beginning. The conference room of Brightwell Enterprises had never felt so tense. A long mahogany table stretched across the space, lined with board members, advisors, and security chiefs. At the head sat Daniel Cross, his expression carved from stone. To his right, Maria sat nervously, her hands gripping Emily's shoulders. The little girl looked small compared to the men in suits, yet her eyes carried a quiet fire. Detective Harris, a seasoned investigator with gray at his temples, cleared his throat. We tested the dessert twice. Both samples showed lethal levels of cyanide. If Mr. Cross had eaten even a single bite, he would not be here today. A ripple of shock moved through the board members. Though they had heard rumors, hearing it laid out so plainly sent chills down their spines. Harris continued. Mr. Grayson is refusing to talk. His lawyer, as you know, has ties to Blackwell Industries, but he shifted his gaze toward Emily. We have a credible eyewitness. All eyes turned toward her. Maria instinctively pulled her daughter closer. She's just a child, she whispered. You can't expect... Daniel raised a hand, silencing the room. His voice was calm but commanding. Emily has already done what none of us could. She saw the switch. She saw what others ignored. That makes her vital. Emily's small voice broke the silence. I saw him hide something in his pocket too before he gave you the plate. The room stiffened. Harris leaned forward. Do you remember what it looked like? Emily's brow furrowed in concentration. It was small, shiny, like a tiny bottle. He held it tight so no one could see. A murmur rose among the board members. Harris scribbled notes quickly. That matches what we suspected, portable toxin containers. Easy to slip in unnoticed. Maria's face paled. This is too much. She's a child, not a witness stand. Daniel's gaze softened as he turned to Maria. Maria, listen to me. Your daughter saved my life. Right now, she may have saved this company too. Whoever is behind this wants me gone. And if they succeed, thousands of jobs are at risk. This is bigger than all of us. Emily tugged at her mother's sleeve, her eyes wide but steady. It's okay, Mama, I want to help. I don't want him to die. Maria's heart broke at the determination in her daughter's voice. She looked up at Daniel, torn between fear and gratitude. Before she could respond, Clara rushed into the room, her face pale. Sir, urgent news, Grayson has escaped custody. The room erupted in chaos. Harris swore under his breath. Impossible, he was under guard. Daniel's jaw clenched. And yet he's gone. Which means someone powerful wanted him free. Emily whispered. The man with the red tie won't stop, will he? Daniel crouched beside her, his piercing blue eyes locking onto hers. No, but neither will we. Later that evening, Daniel drove Maria and Emily home himself, his black sedan gliding through the city lights. Maria sat in the passenger seat, silent and worried, while Emily leaned forward, her curious eyes fixed on the CEO. Why would someone want to hurt you? She asked softly. Daniel exhaled, his grip tightening on the wheel. Because when people want power, Emily, they'll do anything to get it, even kill. Maria turned sharply. And you're dragging us into this? My daughter into this? Daniel's voice lowered, heavy with sincerity. I didn't drag her in. She walked in herself when she shouted across that hall. And because of that, I'm alive. Because of her, Grayson didn't win. I won't let her courage go to waste. The car fell silent for a moment. Then Emily whispered, So, what do we do now? Daniel glanced at her through the rearview mirror. Now? Now we fight back. And Emily? He paused, his voice softening. You're going to help me catch the man who betrayed us all. Emily's small face lit up, not with fear, but with determination. Maria closed her eyes, realizing the storm had only just begun. Rain pattered softly against the mansion, S-glass windows as Daniel sat with Maria and Emily in his private study. The room smelled of leather and old books. The kind of place where secrets were both kept and revealed. A fire crackled in the fireplace, but the warmth did little to ease the tension that hung in the air. Emily's legs dangled off a chair too big for her, but her eyes scanned the table with sharp curiosity. Spread out before them were files, photographs, and corporate reports, puzzle pieces of the betrayal inside Brightwell Enterprises. A collective gasp swept through the boardroom. Some of the executives shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, realizing the weight of what had nearly happened. Mr. Grant turned his gaze toward the dessert. He had been moments away from taking a bite, moments away from a potentially fatal mistake. His face paled, and for once the confident, untouchable CEO looked shaken. The waiter stammered, "Sir, I swear I didn't know. The kitchen assured me it was safe." Grant's eyes narrowed. Either someone made a mistake, or someone wanted me gone. A chill rippled across the room. The idea that this wasn't just an accident, but possibly sabotage, left everyone stunned. Meanwhile, Lily stood there, her eyes wide and fearful. She hadn't meant to cause trouble, only to protect him. Yet now the entire room was looking at her, as if she had just pulled back the curtain on a dangerous secret. Mr. Grant exhaled slowly, his voice softer this time. "You may have just saved my life, Lily." Her father stepped forward quickly, bowing his head. "Sir, please forgive her. She didn't mean to interrupt. She's just a child." But the CEO raised a hand, silencing him. His eyes never left Lily. "No, she may be young, but she's the only one who noticed what no one else did. That makes her smarter and braver than half the people in this room." A heavy silence hung in the air. The dessert was quietly removed, but the tension remained. For the first time in years, Mr. Grant realized his power and wealth couldn't protect him from everything. And now a janitor's daughter had stepped into his world, changing the balance of everything. The executives shuffled out of the boardroom one by one, whispering nervously among themselves. Some avoided eye contact with the CEO altogether. Others cast suspicious glances toward their colleagues. It was clear. Trust inside Brightwell Enterprises had been shattered. Mr. Grant remained seated at the head of the long mahogany table, his eyes fixed on the untouched dessert plate. Lily sat beside her father near the door, clutching her hands together, unsure if she was in trouble or if she had truly done something good. Finally, Grant spoke, his voice low but commanding. "Leave us," he ordered his assistant and the last few stragglers. Only Maria, Lily, and the janitor remained. The door clicked shut. Grant leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "Lily, you said you overheard me before. That was no accident today, was it? Someone new?" Her big eyes flickered with unease. "I don't know, sir, but the man who gave the waiter the tray, he was wearing a red tie. I remember him because he kept staring at you." Grant's expression sharpened instantly. A name surfaced in his mind like poison rising in water. Victor Blackwell, his fiercest rival, the one who'd been trying to swallow his company whole for years. "Red tie," he muttered under his breath, the word laced with venom. Maria looked at him in shock. "You mean someone tried to poison you on purpose?" Grant nodded grimly. If it had been an accident, the kitchen would have raised alarms immediately. This was deliberate, calculated. His voice hardened. "And now we know who." The janitor, still shaken, blurted out, "Sir, if my daughter hadn't spoken up..." He couldn't even finish the sentence. His throat tightened with fear at the thought. Grant's gaze softened slightly as he looked at Lily. "You didn't just save me, young lady. You exposed a plot that could have destroyed everything I've built." Lily's cheeks flushed pink, but she bit her lip nervously. "I didn't mean to get anyone in trouble. I just didn't want you to get hurt." Grant rose from his chair, towering yet calm. For the first time, his voice carried not just authority, but gratitude. "From now on, you stay close. You saw what no one else did, and I need that sharpness by my side." Maria stiffened. "She's a child, Mr. Grant. She doesn't belong in corporate games or assassination plots." Grant turned his gaze on her, serious but respectful. "You're right. She's a child. But whether we like it or not, the moment she opened her mouth tonight, she became a target too." Maria's breath caught. Lily looked up at her mother, fear creeping into her expression. Before another word could be spoken, the heavy knock of the head of security echoed through the study door. He entered quickly, his face pale. "Sir, we intercepted a message. Grayson has been spotted leaving the docks." And he hesitated, swallowing hard. "He's not alone. He's working with Blackwell." Grant's jaw clenched, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. Maria instinctively pulled Lily closer. "What does that mean?" she whispered. Grant's answer was cold and certain. "It means they've already made their next move, and this time they're coming for her." The fire crackled louder, as if echoing his words. Lily's small hand tightened around her mother's, but her eyes never left Mr. Grant's. Somehow deep down she knew this was just the beginning. The storm outside raged through the night, lightning flashing across the city skyline. Inside the mansion, the atmosphere was no calmer. Security had doubled, the gates were locked, and every camera was being monitored. Yet despite it all, Daniel Grant knew one thing. If Blackwell and Grayson wanted in, they would find a way. Maria sat close to Lily on the velvet sofa, clutching her daughter's hand as though letting go would invite disaster. Lily, however, didn't tremble. Her small face was pale but resolute, her eyes darting around as if piecing together a puzzle no adult could solve. Daniel entered the room, his tie loosened, his demeanor less CEO and more man who had faced mortality. In his hand, he carried a folder. "Maria, Lily," he began, setting it on the table. "This isn't just about me anymore. Blackwell doesn't only want to ruin my company, he wants me gone. Tonight, he'll make his move." Lily leaned forward, her voice a whisper but filled with certainty. "He's impatient. He won't wait long." Maria frowned. "How could you possibly?" But before she could finish, the power suddenly flickered. The mansion plunged into darkness. "Generator, now!" Daniel barked into his earpiece. Alarms blared. Cameras showed static. Security scrambled. And then the sound, glass shattering from the east wing. "They're here," Daniel muttered, his voice grim. He looked at Lily. "Remember what you told me earlier? About noticing what others don't?" She nodded quickly. "Then tonight," he said, crouching to her level, "I need those eyes more than ever." In the east wing, shadows moved swiftly. Grayson slipped inside, his face tense, weapon in hand. His mission was clear: silence the girl who had seen too much. But as he turned the corner, the lights suddenly snapped back on, revealing Daniel waiting unflinching. "Looking for me, Grayson?" Daniel's voice was sharp, steady. Grayson sneered. "Not you, the brat." Before he could move, Lily's voice rang out from behind Daniel. "He's lying!" Grayson's head whipped toward her. She stood half hidden, but her voice carried. "He's stalling. He's not here to finish it himself. He's waiting for Blackwell." For the briefest second, Grayson faltered. His silence confirmed her words. Daniel seized the moment. Security stormed the corridor, weapons raised. Grayson was tackled to the ground, shouting curses, but his eyes never left Lily. "She ruined everything," he screamed as they dragged him away. The chaos faded, but Daniel's mind was racing. Lily had been right again. Moments later, a message pinged on Daniel's secured phone. A single line: "This isn't over. VB." Blackwell had escaped, but his pawn had fallen. Hours later, as dawn broke and the city awoke to a new day, Daniel stood on the balcony overlooking his empire. Maria and Lily joined him. He turned to them, his voice softer than ever. "I've built fortunes. I've won wars in boardrooms. But last night, it was a little girl who saved me. Twice." Maria's eyes glistened. "She's just a child, Daniel. She shouldn't have to carry this." But Lily smiled faintly. "Mama, sometimes even kids notice things adults don't. Maybe that's why I was there." Daniel looked at her with a mix of admiration and gratitude. "From now on, Lily, you'll always have a place by my side. Not because I owe you my life, though I do, but because you remind me of something I forgot." "What's that?" she asked softly. "That power and money mean nothing," he said, placing a hand over his heart, "if you don't have someone brave enough to speak the truth." Maria squeezed her daughter's hand. Lily beamed, proud yet humble. As the sun rose higher, Daniel knew the war with Blackwell was far from over. But he also knew this: thanks to the janitor's daughter, he wasn't fighting it alone. And in his world, that made all the difference. Sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the one that saves the world.